You wake up next to someone you used to know. Your husband is 3 feet away but feels like 3 miles. You say good morning. He grunts. You ask about his day. He scrolls. You reach for his hand during dinner. He checks his phone. This is not a bad day. This is Tuesday. This is every day. And somewhere inside that cold distance, something you once had is quietly dying. Saint Teresa of Avila saw this pattern play out in a way that terrified her. Not in marriages, but in something she believed worked exactly the same way: the soul's relationship with God. And what she discovered about slow abandonment, because Teresa watched this destruction unfold day after day, and she left us a map of exactly how it happens. Her mother died when Teresa was 14. Her father sent her to a monastery school because he could not control her. She hated it, but something happened in that stone building that Teresa would spend the rest of her life trying to understand. She felt wanted, not by a man, by something bigger. By 1536, at age 21, she entered the Carmelite convent of the Incarnation in Avila. And then, for nearly 20 years, she stopped trying. From her confessors, and from the interior castle, completed on November 29th, 1577, both translated by the Benedictines of Stanbrook and verified through the Carmelite archives in Avila. These are not popular retellings. These are her actual documented experiences. Now back to what Teresa saw. There were over 150 nuns living there. They had servants. They wore jewelry. They spent afternoons in the parlor entertaining guests, gossiping, laughing, treating the convent like a social club for wealthy women who did not want to marry. Teresa fit right in. She was charming, witty. Everyone wanted to be around her, and she was miserable, not dramatically, not in a way anyone could see. She prayed when required, attended Mass, followed the rules, but inside she felt nothing. She describes this period in her life with a single word that appears 47 times in her autobiography: lukewarm. Not hot, not cold, lukewarm, the temperature of something left to die slowly. Fell again. 20 years. She was not committing terrible sins. She was not breaking vows. She was just going through the motions, showing up but not present. And she realized something that made her sick. She was doing to God exactly what she had seen destroy every relationship around her. She was there, but she was not there. She had entered the first room of the castle, then stopped moving. Teresa would later write about this in the interior castle, her masterpiece on the soul's journey toward intimacy. She described the soul as a crystal castle with 7 mansions, 7 levels of deepening relationship. The first mansion is where most people live. They are technically inside, they have committed, they are in the relationship, but they are so preoccupied with everything outside the castle, so distracted by status and comfort and what other people think, that they barely notice the person at the center. They live in the courtyard. And Teresa says something bone-chilling about people in the first mansion. They are in a state of grace, but surrounded by venomous creatures that slowly poison them. The venomous creatures are not dramatic temptations. They are the small things, the daily distractions, the conversations that matter more than the one person who should matter most. They almost buried her alive because they thought she was dead. She woke up 4 hours before they lowered her into the ground, and when she recovered enough to speak, she told her confessor something that made him order her to write it down. During those 3 years of suffering, she had stopped praying entirely, not because she was angry, not because she doubted, because she was too distracted, too tired, too focused on her body, her pain, her comfort. She had chosen her own suffering over the one relationship that could have carried her through it, choosing the comfortable conversation over the vulnerable one, choosing to be liked over being known. And here is what Teresa realized that changed everything. She was not alone in this. Everyone around her was doing the same thing. The entire convent was full of women who had entered a committed relationship and then spent 20 years avoiding actual intimacy. They were married to God in name only. And Teresa looked at them and thought, this is exactly how human marriages die. Teresa called this the first mansion. Modern psychologists call it emotional neglect. Same thing, death by 1,000 cuts. She fell to her knees and wept, not gentle tears, gut-wrenching sobs, because she realized he had been there the whole time, waiting, watching, wanting her, and she had been too busy, too distracted, too comfortable to notice. She had ignored the one who loved her most for 20 years. She wrote this: I had wasted so much time while I might have been gaining great treasures. The word she uses is wasted. Not lost, wasted, thrown away. From that moment, Teresa began moving deeper into the castle. Second mansion, third, fourth. And as she moved, she started seeing things other people could not see. She saw souls. She saw the invisible world where love lives or dies, and what she saw about relationships, about intimacy, about what happens when people stop really showing up for each other became the foundation of everything she would teach for the next 27 years. She saw couples destroy each other, not through violence, but through silence, not through betrayal, but through benign neglect. She saw what happens when you live with someone but never truly see them, and she wrote it all down. But here's the problem. They are still half in, half out. They want intimacy without sacrifice. They want closeness without vulnerability. They attend therapy but do not do the work. They say, I will try harder, and then check their phone during dinner. Again. Teresa describes the second mansion as a tug of war. The soul wants God but also wants comfort, wants depth but also wants ease, wants connection but also wants control. And she says, most people stay here for years, decades, wanting both but getting neither. She writes, the world's call is so loud and insistent and pleasure seems so attractive. Replace the world with my career or my hobbies or my friends or my phone and you have modern marriage. The relationship is there. The commitment exists. But so do 1,000 other things that feel easier, more rewarding, less demanding. And day by day, the distance grows. She saw couples, actual married couples in the town doing the same thing, sleeping in the same bed, eating at the same table, raising the same children, and completely unknown to each other. Not because they did not love each other once, but because they stopped choosing each other 1,000 times. And 1,000 times became forever. People in the third mansion have discipline. They show up. They do the right things. They pray, work, serve. They look perfect from the outside. But Teresa says something brutal about the third mansion. These are souls who think they are already doing everything required. They believe the relationship is fine because they are checking boxes, praying, going to church. But they have confused routine with intimacy, presence with connection. And Teresa says this is the most dangerous place to be. Because when you think you have arrived, you stop moving forward. You settle. And settling is where relationships go to die slowly. And it might be two people who have stopped trying, who have mistaken the absence of conflict for the presence of love, who have grown so comfortable they forgot to stay curious. Teresa saw this in the nuns who had been in the convent for 30 years. Perfect attendance, perfect obedience, zero transformation. They were technically doing everything right, but nothing was alive. She writes about this with frustration. If this state lasts for many years, I think that the soul will be in great danger. Because here is what happens in the third mansion. You become so focused on doing the right things that you forget why you're doing them. You perform acts of love without feeling love. You say the words without meaning them. You go through the motions so perfectly that you do not notice the person you are going through. The motions for has become invisible to you. Teresa saw this kill spiritual relationships. It kills marriages the same way. The death is just slower, quieter, more socially acceptable. You can be in the third mansion your entire life, checking boxes, and never once be truly intimate with the person sleeping next to you, where he stops waiting for you to notice him and starts showing up whether you are ready or not. Teresa describes the fourth mansion as the beginning of the supernatural, not because God was not there before, but because now you are finally present enough to feel it, to feel him. And it is terrifying, because real intimacy requires you to let your guard down, to stop performing, to stop trying to look good, to show up exactly as you are, messy and broken and needy. And most people cannot handle it. They retreat, back to the third mansion, where they can keep their routines and their control, where they can keep pretending everything is fine. The parts that need help, the parts that are scared and lonely and desperate for connection. And this is where most relationships die. Not because people stop loving each other, but because they are too afraid to be seen, too afraid to need, too afraid to admit they have been faking it for years. Teresa watched this moment play out in the nuns who came to her for spiritual direction. The moment they realized, I cannot fake this anymore. Either I go deeper or I leave. And most of them left. Not physically. They stayed in the convent, but they stopped moving forward. They settled into comfortable mediocrity. And Teresa grieved for them because she knew what they were missing. Not the version you want them to be. Not the version you remember from when you first met. The version that is sitting across from you right now, wanting to be known. And Teresa says, this is where most people realize, I have not actually been paying attention. For years, for decades. I have been in this relationship, but I have not been present. And the grief of that realization is almost unbearable. She writes, the soul is like someone who hears the sound of water but does not know where it comes from. You know something is there. You feel it, but you cannot name it, cannot locate it. And if you stay in that discomfort long enough, if you do not run back to distraction and routine and comfortable numbness, you might finally discover what you have been missing. The actual person you committed to, not the idea of them. Not the version from 10 years ago. Them, right now, needing you, wanting you, waiting for you to show up, really show up. The soul and God become engaged, committed in a new way, exclusive. And Teresa says this changes everything. Because now there is no more hiding, no more pretending. The person you are in relationship with sees you completely, knows you completely, and chooses you anyway. This is the moment every relationship either becomes unbreakable or shatters completely, because you cannot be half in anymore. You cannot keep one foot out the door. You cannot hedge your bets and keep your options open and protect yourself from being hurt. You are all in or you're out. And now you are just you, naked, vulnerable, completely exposed. And if the person you are with cannot handle that, if they cannot meet you in that place of total honesty, the relationship will not survive. Not because you do not care about each other, but because you are finally asking for something most people cannot give, their whole self. No masks, no performance, no hiding. Nuns who had spent years in the convent, years praying, years trying, suddenly faced with a reality that God wanted all of them. Not the polite version, not the trying hard version, all of them. And they could not do it. They backed away, slowly, quietly. They stayed in the relationship technically, but emotionally they were gone. And Teresa writes about this with heartbreak. They were so close, so close. One more step, they would have had everything, but they could not take it. Too vulnerable, too exposed, too scary. So they settled for a surface-level relationship that looked good from the outside, but was hollow at the core. And this is where most marriages end up. Not divorced, not separated, just two people who once loved each other, now living parallel lives in the same house, close enough to touch, miles apart. But Teresa does not stop there. She goes deeper. Mansion 6. And here is where things get brutal. The sixth mansion is suffering, not because God is punishing the soul, but because real intimacy requires you to share the pain, to stop protecting yourself, to stop hiding when you're hurt, to stop pretending you are fine when you are not. Teresa describes the sixth mansion as the place where the soul is pierced, wounded, broken open, and in that brokenness, finally truly connected. Because you cannot be intimate with someone who will not let you see them bleed. And if the other person can hold that moment, can sit in that pain without trying to fix it or minimize it or run from it, something shifts. The relationship becomes real, not perfect, real. Two broken people choosing to stay broken together instead of pretending to be whole alone. She talks about the soul being pierced by an angel with a golden spear tipped with fire. The pain is unbearable, but mixed with the pain is a sweetness so profound that she does not want it to stop. This is the paradox of intimacy. It hurts. It costs everything. But it is the only thing worth having. And most people, Teresa says, cannot handle it. They want the sweetness without the suffering, the connection without the cost, the intimacy without the vulnerability. And so they never make it to Mansion 7. They spend their entire lives in relationships that are comfortable but not alive, safe but not real, together but not intimate. The soul and God so intertwined that you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. And she says something that shook me when I read it. The soul always remains in its center with its God. Always. Not when it feels like it. Not when things are good. Always. Because this is what happens when you finally stop protecting yourself. Stop holding back. Stop trying to control the relationship. You merge. You become part of each other. And yes, that is terrifying. Because if they leave now, part of you leaves with them. But it is also the only thing that makes life worth living. To be so connected to another human being that their joy is your joy. Their pain is your pain. Their presence is your home. 10,000 moments where you could have turned away, protected yourself, chosen comfort over connection, and you chose to stay instead. You chose to be present. You chose to be vulnerable. You chose to see and be seen. And those 10,000 choices built something stronger than stone, stronger than promises. A connection that cannot be broken because it is not held together by willpower. It is held together by shared life. By the accumulation of moments when you could have walked away and you stayed. They have routines. They have habits. They have the appearance of relationship without the substance. And they live their entire lives that way, married for 40 years, together for 50. And they never once let the other person truly see them, never once allowed themselves to need, never once chose vulnerability over self-protection. And then one day they wake up and realize, we lived together for half a century and I do not know you. And you do not know me. And it is too late to start now. And Teresa wrote about this with an urgency that borders on desperation. Do not wait, do not waste time, because you do not know how much time you have. And by the time you notice the damage, by the time you feel the distance, you have built a wall so high you cannot see over it anymore. And climbing it requires something most people are not willing to give: humility. The humility to say, I was wrong. I've been wrong for years. I chose comfort over you. I chose distraction over presence. I chose my pride over intimacy. And I am sorry, and I want to start over, and I am terrified you will say no. But I am asking anyway, because life without you, real you, known you, intimate you, is not worth living. But I have been showing up for this relationship the way I want to show up, not the way my partner needs me to. I have been giving what is easy for me to give instead of what they are actually asking for. I have been performing love instead of being love. And until I face that, Until I actually see what I have been doing, nothing will change. The distance will just keep growing. And one day I will wake up and they will be gone. Not physically. They will still be sleeping next to me, but emotionally, spiritually, intimately, they will be gone. And it will be my fault. Because God is in them as much as He is in your prayers. And if you ignore them, dismiss them, fail to see them, then you are ignoring God. No matter how many hours you spend in the chapel. Replace God with your spouse's name, and you have the brutal truth of marriage. You cannot claim to love someone you refuse to see. You cannot claim intimacy with someone you refuse to know. You cannot build a life with someone you are too busy, too distracted, too self-protected to actually show up for. Or they stay together, but give up. They accept the distance as permanent and just try to make the best of it. They become roommates who used to be lovers, companions who used to be soulmates. And Teresa says this is a tragedy, not a sin, not a failure, a tragedy. Because they were so close, if they had just kept going, if they had just chosen vulnerability one more time, if they had just said, I need help instead of, I am fine, they could have had everything. But they stopped too soon. They settled for less. And they will spend the rest of their lives wondering what might have been, for the first time in years. And I am sorry. I am so sorry. And I do not know if we can fix this. But I want to try. Not because I am supposed to, not because it is the right thing to do, but because I cannot imagine my life without you. The real you, the one I have been too afraid to know. And if you are willing, I want to start learning who you actually are. Not who I thought you were. Not who I needed you to be. Who you are. Right now, today. Even if it scares me. Even if it costs me everything I have been using to protect myself. Because life with you, real, intimate, vulnerable life with you, is worth more than safety, more than comfort, more than pride. It is worth everything. Major works on prayer and intimacy, and personally directing hundreds of women in the art of showing up for relationship. Her last words, recorded by the nun sitting next to her bed, "My Lord, I am a daughter of the church." But the note she left for her nuns, written 2 weeks before she died, said something different, something that cuts to the bone. All things pass, God never changes, patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing, God alone suffices. You have to build it on the daily choice to show up, to be present, to see and be seen, to need and allow yourself to be needed, to give not what is easy, but what is required. And that work never ends. It is patience, daily choice, daily dying to your own comfort and self-protection so that intimacy can live. Joseph in Avila. A letter Teresa wrote to a married woman named Redacted, whose husband had left her, not physically. He still lived in the house, but he had stopped seeing her, stopped hearing her, stopped showing up. And she had written to Teresa asking, "Is this my fault? Did I do something wrong? Should I try harder?" And Teresa's response, 642 words, boiled down to one line: "You cannot make someone choose you. But you can stop pretending the distance is normal." She told the woman, "Do not ignore it. Do not make excuses for it. Do not act like everything is fine when it is not. Because every day you pretend, you make the lie more real. You make the distance permanent. You teach him that this is acceptable, that you will stay no matter how little he gives. And that is not love. That is fear dressed up as patience. Real love demands more. Real love says, I see the distance. I feel it. And I refuse to pretend it is okay. Because you are worth more than this. We are worth more than this. And if you will not fight for us, I will. But I will not pretend we are close when we are not." The same woman, now 64, requesting that Teresa's letter be buried with her when she dies. The notation does not say whether her husband ever came back, whether the distance was ever closed. It just says she kept the letter. She read it until the pages fell apart. And when she died, she wanted it with her, as if those words, that brutal, uncomfortable truth, were the only thing she had to hold on to. The only thing that told her, you were not crazy, the distance was real, and you deserved more. Because slow death is still death, and you do not have to accept it. To share space without sharing life, to say I love you while looking at your phone. And by the time you notice, by the time the distance becomes undeniable, you have trained each other so well in the art of not connecting that rebuilding intimacy feels impossible. Not because you do not care, but because you have forgotten how. You have spent so long protecting yourself that vulnerability feels like a language you used to speak but cannot remember anymore. Not because it feels good, but because this is what love actually costs. Teresa saw it happen over and over. Do not wait, because the person sleeping next to you will not wait forever. Eventually, they will stop asking to be seen. They will accept the distance as permanent, and then it will be too late. Not because they stopped loving you, but because they learned to live without you while you were right there. She sealed it with wax and handed it to her confessor with specific instructions. Do not let anyone read this who is not willing to do the work. Not willing to think about it, not willing to consider it, willing to do the work. The brutal, uncomfortable, ego-destroying work of looking at how you actually show up for the people you claim to love. And if you're not willing to face that, Teresa says, do not read this book. Because it will wreck you. It will show you the distance. It will name the 1,000 small ways you have been abandoning the people who need you most. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You will have to choose. Keep pretending or change everything. And most people, she says with brutal honesty, are not willing to change. They would rather die comfortable than live vulnerable. They would rather keep their pride than have intimacy. And so they do. And they spend their whole lives together. And they never once truly meet. Well, the letters were never sent because Teresa died before she could mail them. But they were preserved. And they are brutal. One letter to a married couple who had been together 32 years. You're not enemies, but you're not friends either. You are strangers who share a bed, and every day you accept this. You make peace with the distance. You tell yourself this is normal. This is what marriage becomes. But it is not. It is what marriage becomes when you stop choosing each other, when you stop being brave enough to say I need you, when you stop being honest enough to say I am hurt, when you stop being vulnerable enough to say I am scared and I do not know how to fix this, but I do not want to give up. You are not too old to start over. You are not too far gone, but you are running out of time. And if you do not act now, if you do not interrupt the pattern of polite distance and comfortable loneliness, you will die this way, together but alone. And that is the saddest thing I can imagine. Pride over vulnerability. And they tell themselves, it is fine. This is just how it is. This is what happens after 20 years, after 30. But Teresa says no. That is what happens when you stop trying, when you stop seeing each other. When you accept slow death as normal, and you do not have to. You can choose differently, today, this moment, but it will cost you everything you have been using to protect yourself, your pride, your comfort, your carefully constructed image of having it all together. And most people, she says, again and again in these unsent letters, are not willing to pay that price. So they stay comfortable, they stay distant, they stay together but alone, and they call it love. But it is not love. It is fear dressed up as commitment. And it kills just as surely as any betrayal, just slower, quieter, with more socially acceptable excuses. The final unsent letter, dated September 12, 1582, 3 weeks before her death, is addressed to anyone who has wasted years. 3 paragraphs, 190 words. The last line, start now, not tomorrow, now. Because tomorrow you will have another excuse, and another, and then one day there will be no more tomorrows, and you will have spent your entire life with someone you never truly knew. And they will have spent their entire life with you, and both of you will die lonely, together but lonely. Do not let that be your story. Interrupt it, today.